Good evening. Imagine cruising at 30,000 feet in one of the most advanced fighter jets on Earth. A Russian Su-35s worth more than $50 million, armed with precision glide bombs, supposedly untouchable behind layers of electronic warfare and air defenses. You are on a routine mission over eastern Ukraine, dropping standoff weapons from what Russian pilots call safe distance. Then, out of nowhere, a flash on your radar warning receiver, a lock-on tone you weren't expecting, a missile you never saw coming. In the blink of an eye, your multi-million-dollar war machine becomes a flaming comet streaking toward the frozen ground. The pilot ejects just in time, but the jet and Russia's illusion of air superiority crashes and burns. Tonight on this, the 28th of December 2025, exclusive battlefield footage has surfaced showing exactly that moment. A top-tier Russian Su-35S, the crown jewel of Moscow's modern air force, tumbling out of the sky in flames over Donetsk Oblast. Ukrainian air defense crews are claiming a direct hit with a Western-supplied missile system, one that reached farther and struck faster than Russian planners ever thought possible. The pilot parachuted to safety and is now reportedly in Ukrainian custody, but the aircraft itself is a total loss. $50 million of advanced radar engines and avionics reduced to twisted metal in a snowy field. Moscow has gone quiet. No official confirmation. No footage from the Russian side. Pro-Kremlin military bloggers are already spinning tales of technical malfunction or pilot error. But geolocated video, radar tracks, and intercepted radio traffic paint a very different picture. Tonight, we break down exactly how Ukraine turned the tables in the skies, what weapon system likely delivered the fatal blow, and most importantly, why this single down jet exposes vulnerabilities in Russia's air force that the Kremlin is fighting desperately to keep hidden from its own people and the world. Our map shows the engagement zone deep in occupied Donetsk, where Russian fighters have operated with relative impunity for years until yesterday morning. To understand the full magnitude of this kill and what it means for the future of air warfare over Ukraine, we first have to trace the chain of events that put this $50 million jet directly in the crosshairs. The downed Su-35s took off just before dawn on the 27th of December from an airbase deep inside Russian territory, likely Primorsko-Akhtarsk on the Sea of Azov coast, one of the primary launch points for Russian strike missions over southern and eastern Ukraine. Its call sign, according to intercepted radio traffic, was part of a two-ship formation tasked with a standard glide bomb sortie. These missions have become the backbone of Russia's air campaign in 2025. Unable to achieve full air superiority against Ukraine's increasingly capable air defenses, Russian pilots adopted a safer but still deadly tactic: approach the front line at high altitude, release precision-guided glide bombs such as the Fab-500 with UMPK wing kits from 50 to 70 kilometers away, then turn back before entering the most dangerous engagement zones. From the pilot's perspective, it's supposed to be low risk, high reward. Drop the bombs, return home, repeat. For months, this standoff method has allowed Russia to hammer Ukrainian positions around Pokrovsk, Krakow, and Velika Novosilka with relative impunity, while preserving their shrinking fleet of modern fighters. On this particular morning, the Su-35s was armed with 4 such glide bombs and escorted by its wingman, flying a parallel track. Radar tracks reconstructed by Ukrainian and Western intelligence show the jet crossing into occupied airspace over Donetsk Oblast at around 7:40 local time. It climbed to optimal release altitude, approximately 35,000 feet, and began its bombing run. The pilot would have felt confident. His onboard electronic warfare suite, the Kibani M system, was active, jamming radar signals and deploying decoys. Russian ground-based air defenses, including S-400 batteries positioned near the border, were supposed to provide an umbrella against long-range threats, and the engagement zone was well outside the published range of most known Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles. But something went wrong, critically wrong. Ukrainian listening posts detected the incoming aircraft early, likely thanks to NATO-shared airborne early warning data and ground-based passive radar networks that can track stealthy targets without emitting signals. Instead of engaging immediately with older systems like the S-300, Ukrainian commanders chose to wait. They held fire until the Su-35 committed to its release point, until it was deep inside what pilots call the commit cone, too far along the attack profile to easily break away. That's when the trap sprang. A missile sources in Kyiv strongly suggest a Patriot PAC-3 MSE interceptor, possibly repositioned in secret closer to the front than previously known, launched from a concealed battery somewhere in the Dnipropetrovsk or Zaporizhzhia region. MSE has a published range exceeding 160 kilometers against aerodynamic targets and is specifically designed to kill maneuvering fighters at high altitude flying at Mach 5, guided by active radar in its terminal phase. It closed the distance in under a minute. The Sukhoi-Su-35's radar warning receiver screamed. Countermeasures flared. The pilot yanked the stick into a violent brake turn, but it was too late. Video captured by Ukrainian partisans near the crash site shows the jet trailing fire from its starboard engine, rolling uncontrollably before the canopy blasts away and the ejection seat rockets the pilot clear. The $50 million aircraft spirals downward, impacting in a massive fireball that lights up the snowy landscape for miles. The pilot lands in occupied territory but is quickly located and captured by Ukrainian special forces operating behind the lines, a humiliating footnote for Russian prestige. This was no lucky shot. It was a calculated ambush that exploited a fatal complacency in Russian tactics, one that Moscow has been trying to downplay for months as Ukraine's air defenses grow deadlier and more unpredictable. And this single kill is just the tip of a much larger problem for Russia's Air Force. This Su-35S is not the first high-value Russian aircraft to fall from Ukrainian skies in recent months, and it almost certainly won't be the last. Independent analysts tracking verified losses now put Russia's fixed-wing combat aircraft casualties at over 380 since the full-scale invasion began, with more than 120 of those being modern fourth-generation fighters like the Su-30, Su-34, and Su-35. Each one represents not just a $50 to $80 million price tag, but years of production time, hundreds of hours of pilot training, and irreplaceable components crippled by Western sanctions. Russia's aerospace industry, once capable of rolling out dozens of new fighters per year, is now struggling to produce even a handful. Pre-war inventories of Su-35 stood at around 110 airframes, with losses, battle damage, and cannibalization for parts. Experts estimate fewer than 70 remain operational today. Every shoot-down accelerates this erosion, but the real crisis for Moscow is not just the raw numbers. It's the shift in risk calculus for the pilots who fly what's left. Russian aircrews have grown increasingly cautious, refusing to cross into Ukrainian-controlled airspace where shorter-range systems like Manpads or NASAMS batteries wait. Instead, they rely almost entirely on standoff glide bombs dropped from extreme distances. This tactic preserves planes and pilots, but it sacrifices accuracy and payload. Many bombs miss or fail to detonate, and Ukrainian troops have learned to disperse and dig deeper. Now, even that safe zone is shrinking. The Patriot PAC-3 MSE missile that likely claimed the Su-35 has a reach that forces Russian pilots to release their weapons from even farther away, reducing effectiveness and increasing the chance of countermeasures. More importantly, Ukraine has quietly repositioned batteries closer to the front under heavy electronic warfare cover and decoy systems, turning areas once considered safe into potential kill zones. Add to that the impending arrival of F-16 fighters already training Ukrainian pilots in NATO countries and expected on the front lines in early 2026. And the noose around Russian air operations is tightening. Western intelligence officials privately describe Russia's Air Force as approaching a critical depletion point, the moment when remaining aircraft are too valuable to risk, yet too few to maintain meaningful pressure. When that threshold is crossed, Russia's ability to support ground offensives with close air support collapses. Artillery can compensate to a degree, but nothing replaces the flexibility and psychological impact of fast jets overhead. Moscow knows this. That's why the Kremlin has gone to extraordinary lengths to hide the true scale of losses, censoring crash footage, pressuring families of downed pilots to stay silent, and flooding information channels with claims of Ukrainian aircraft kills that rarely hold up to scrutiny. Pro-Russian bloggers who dare report confirmed losses too openly often find their channels demonetized or throttled. The narrative must remain one of dominance, of inevitable victory, because admitting the skies are slipping from Russia's grasp would be devastating for domestic morale and Putin's image as the guarantor of military strength. Yet the burning wreckage of this Su-35, scattered across a snowy field in Donetsk, tells a story the Kremlin cannot erase. One more elite jet gone, one more experienced pilot in captivity, one more step toward a battlefield where Russian air power becomes a shadow of what it once was. And Ukraine's defenders are only getting started. The loss of this single Su-35S ripples far beyond the smoking crater. It left in Donetsk in the immediate aftermath. Russian air operations over the Eastern Front were noticeably curtailed. Sortie rates dropped by as much as 30% in the 48 hours following the shoot. Down, according to NATO airborne surveillance data, pilots already operating under strict rules of engagement designed to minimize risk are now demanding even greater standoff distances, pushing release points back to 80 or 90 kilometers in some sectors. That extra distance sounds small, but it dramatically reduces the accuracy of glide bombs and gives Ukrainian mobile forces more time to scatter or take cover. Ground commanders in the Pokrovsk and Kharkov axes have reported a marked decrease in effective Russian air support, fewer direct hits on fortified positions, fewer disrupted Ukrainian supply convoys. In military terms, this is called air denial in reverse. Ukraine, long denied freedom of maneuver in its own skies, is now slowly imposing restrictions on Russian aircraft. Experienced Russian pilots, already a scarce resource after years of attrition, are becoming more reluctant to fly combat missions. Whispers circulating on closed Russian military forums, monitored by Western intelligence. Training a competent Su-35 pilot takes years and hundreds of millions of rubles. Resources Moscow is pouring into drone production and artillery shells instead. Meanwhile, Ukraine's air defense teams are emboldened. The successful engagement proves that their most advanced Western systems, Patriot NASAMS and soon Iris, TSLM, can be employed aggressively, not just defensively around cities, but offensively, to contest Russian airspace over the occupied East. Commanders are now authorized to conduct more ambush patrols, temporarily repositioning batteries forward under heavy camouflage and electronic protection, firing, then rapidly displacing before Russian counter, battery, or anti-radiation missiles can respond. This hit-and-run tactic turns static air defense into a mobile hunter force. And the hunters are getting new weapons. Sources in the Pentagon confirm that additional Patriot batteries and hundreds of PAC-3 MSE missiles are en route to Ukraine before the end of January 2026. Talks are also advancing on transferring older, but still lethal MIM-23 Hawk systems from Allied stockpiles to free up Patriots for forward deployment. Most significantly, the first squadron of Ukrainian-piloted F-16S is expected to achieve initial operational capability in the coming weeks. These jets, armed with AIM-120 DAMRAAM missiles that outrange anything in Russia's arsenal, will be able to engage Russian aircraft long before they reach their glide bomb release points. When that happens, the standoff tactic that has kept Russian jets alive may no longer work at all. Russia's response options are grim. They can continue losing irreplaceable aircraft and pilots, slowly ceding control of the air. They can pull their modern fighters back entirely, relying solely on cruise missiles and drones, expensive, less flexible, and increasingly intercepted. Or they can attempt to suppress Ukrainian air defenses with massive siege suppression of enemy air defenses campaigns using anti-radiation missiles and decoys, a high-risk operation that historically has cost Russia dozens of aircraft in failed attempts early in the war. None of these paths restore the air dominance Moscow expected when this war began. Tonight, as recovery teams quietly retrieve what's left of the downed Su-35 under cover of darkness, desperate to prevent Ukraine from parading the wreckage, the Kremlin faces a truth it cannot admit publicly. The skies over Ukraine are no longer theirs, and with every fireball like this one, they are slipping further out of reach. But the story doesn't end here. There are growing signs that Ukraine is preparing something far more ambitious, an operation that could turn these isolated kills into a systematic dismantling of Russian air power. And when that begins, the balance over the battlefield could shift in ways Moscow has not prepared for. The wreckage of that Su-35 is still smoldering tonight, but the real fire is just beginning to spread. Ukrainian commanders, emboldened by this kill and a string of similar successes over the past month, are no longer content to play pure defense in the air. Sources inside the Ukrainian Air Force tell us that planning is underway for a far more aggressive Phase 1 that could systematically hunt down and destroy Russia's remaining modern fighters before they even reach their release points. The blueprint is simple but devastating. Combine forward-deployed Patriot and NASAMS batteries with the incoming F-16s in coordinated air denial sweeps. F-16s flying under NATO AWACS cover and armed with the long-range AIM -120D AMRAAM would act as the bait and the spotters, pushing forward to force Russian jets to turn on their radars or commit to an engagement. The moment a Russian fighter illuminates or maneuvers aggressively, ground-based missiles launch from concealed positions hundreds of kilometers away, guided by the F-16's targeting data. It's a trap Russia has no good answer for. Their own air-to-air missiles are outranged. Their electronic warfare pods can confuse older systems, but not the latest active radar seekers on the PAC-3 and AMRAAM-D. And their pilots know it. Intercepts from the last 24 hours show Russian squadron commanders openly discussing unacceptable risk on supposedly secure channels. One wing commander was heard telling his superiors, "We cannot continue these missions without unacceptable losses. Recommend suspension until countermeasures are fielded." Those countermeasures? They don't exist yet. Russia has rushed newer jamming pods and decoys into service, but field tests show they struggle against the latest Western guidance packages. More desperate ideas like arming old MiG-31 interceptors with hypersonic Kinzhal missiles to threaten Ukrainian airfields are being floated. But those aircraft are few, the missiles are expensive, and the bases are heavily defended. Meanwhile, Ukraine is quietly receiving more of everything it needs to press the advantage. Additional Patriot fire units from European allies clearing out stockpiles, hundreds of fresh missiles, and the first combat-ready F-16 squadrons expected to stand up in January. If this coordinated campaign launches in the opening weeks of 2026, Russia could lose a dozen or more modern fighters in a matter of days, forcing a complete withdrawal of its air force from meaningful operations over the front. When that happens, the entire character of the ground war changes. Without reliable air support, Russian infantry assaults become far bloodier and slower. Ukrainian counterattacks gain freedom to maneuver. Supply lines that were once vulnerable to glide bombs suddenly become safer. In short, the loss of air superiority could become the domino that starts toppling Russia's entire eastern offensive. Tonight, as Moscow scrambles to recover the black box from the downed Su-35, hoping to learn anything that can save the rest of the fleet, the Kremlin faces a nightmare it has avoided admitting for nearly 4 years. The skies it thought it owned are turning hostile, and Ukraine is preparing to make them lethal. We are on the brink of a new phase in this war, one fought not just on the ground, but for control of the air above it. What happens in the coming weeks could decide whether Russia retains any meaningful air power at all, or whether the next $50 million jet to fall is just the beginning of a cascade Moscow cannot stop. We will be tracking every mission, every claim, every new piece of wreckage. The fight for Ukraine's skies has entered its decisive chapter. Stay with us. Tonight, behind closed doors in Moscow, the loss of the Su-35 has triggered a crisis that is spreading fast through the upper ranks of the Russian Air Force. Emergency video conferences have been held between the Aerospace Forces Command and the Ministry of Defense, with Putin himself reportedly briefed on the incident within hours. The questions are brutal. How did a Patriot battery get close enough undetected? Why did the Kybani jamming system fail to spoof the missile? And most urgently, what can be done to prevent the next jet from meeting the same fate? Russia's options are running out, and none of them are good. First, they are rushing new electronic warfare upgrades to surviving aircraft experimental pods, rumored to incorporate AI-driven frequency hopping and more powerful decoys. But these systems are unproven in combat, Production is limited to a handful per month, and fitting them across the fleet will take most of 2026 if sanctions don't choke the supply of critical microchips first. Second, commanders are debating a return to aggressive seed missions, large packages of aircraft launching anti-radiation missiles, like the KH-31P, to hunt and destroy Ukrainian radar emitters. It's a tactic Russia tried early in the war with disastrous results, losing dozens of jets to well-prepared traps. Doing it again now, against a far more experienced and better-armed Ukrainian air defense network, would be even costlier. Third, and most telling, some voices in the general staff are quietly advocating the unthinkable: a partial or full withdrawal of modern fighters from frontline missions altogether. Shift the Su-30s, Su-34s, and remaining Su-35s to rear duties, cruise missile launches, deep strikes on fixed infrastructure, anything that keeps them hundreds of kilometers from Ukrainian SAMs. Let older Su-25 attack jets and helicopters take the close support role, even if it means higher losses of those cheaper, more expendable platforms. In other words, accept that air superiority over the front is no longer achievable and pivot to a purely defensive posture in the sky. If that recommendation is adopted, and sources say it is gaining traction, it would mark a historic admission of failure. Russia began this war expecting to sweep Ukrainian air defenses in days and establish total control of the airspace. 4 years later, it would be reduced to hiding its best aircraft while Ukraine, with Western help, dictates the terms of engagement. The political consequences would be seismic. Putin has repeatedly boasted of Russia's world-class aviation and hypersonic superiority. State media parades sleek Su-35 formations at air shows as proof of unbreakable military might. Admitting they can no longer operate safely over the battlefield would shatter that narrative. It would invite questions the regime cannot tolerate. Why, after trillions of rubles spent modernizing the Air Force, are we losing the sky to a country we were told would fall in 3 days? Why are pilots refusing missions? Why are we burning through irreplaceable assets with no end in sight? Those questions, once asked openly, spread fast in a system built on the illusion of inevitable victory. Tonight, as engineers comb through the wreckage of the latest fallen jet for clues, and as pilots across Russian bases read the after-action reports with growing unease, the Kremlin faces a choice: risk more catastrophic losses in a bid to regain dominance, or quietly retreat from the skies and watch the ground war become infinitely harder. Either way, the era of Russian jets roaming freely over Ukraine is ending. And when the first Ukrainian F-16s take to those same skies in the coming weeks, armed and ready to hunt, the final chapter of this aerial battle may be written in fire. We are watching a turning point unfold in real time. The next jet to fall could be the one that forces Moscow to confront a reality it has denied for years. Stay with us as this story develops. Part 07: Fundy, the Precipice. A cliffhanger in the skies tonight. The frozen fields of Donetsk hold more than just the twisted wreckage of a $50 million fighter. They hold the future of this war in the balance. In the coming days, the first Ukrainian F-16s will take to these same skies sleek, modern, armed with missiles that can reach out and touch Russian jets long before they ever see the front line. Patriot batteries are already moving forward under cover of darkness, repositioning for the hunts to come. Ukrainian pilots fresh from NATO training are running final simulations, counting down the hours until their first combat patrols. On the other side, Russian squadron commanders stare at their roster boards and see empty slots where experienced crews used to be. They read the latest intelligence summaries, warnings of new ambush zones, longer-range threats, traps they can no longer evade. Some are already refusing missions. Others are quietly submitting transfer requests. The black box from the downed Su-35 has been recovered, but the data it contains offers no miracles, only confirmation of what everyone already fears. The precipice, a cliffhanger in the skies tonight. The frozen fields of Donetsk hold more than just the twisted wreckage of a $50 million fighter. They hold the future of this war in the balance. In the coming days, the first Ukrainian F-16s will take to these same skies sleek, modern, armed with missiles that can reach out and touch Russian jets long before they ever see the front line. Patriot batteries are already moving forward under cover of darkness, repositioning for the hunts to come. Ukrainian pilots, fresh from NATO training, are running final simulations, counting down the hours until their first combat patrols. On the other side, Russian squadron commanders stare at their roster boards and see empty slots where experienced crews